Students, counselors, families, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever it is you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining StriveScan and Cachet's virtual college exploration program. A few housekeeping items before we begin with this session. First and foremost, you are encouraged to ask questions of your panel throughout this session via the Q&A button that you see on your screen. When you submit a question, it gets sent to our panelist, and she will work to answer them at the end of the session today. Also, bear in mind that this is a 45-minute session, so she may not get to all of the questions, so she'll work to respond to you afterward as well. As a reminder, your camera and your microphone are turned off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. So if you do have questions, make sure to type them in through that Q&A tool. This is one of 50 panel presentations and individual information sessions that are STEM focused, and we're running these through Thursday evening. We encourage you to go to strivescan.com/virtual/STEM, the same place you went to register for this individual session, to check out the different panels and other STEM focused institutions. When you sign up today, you received a barcode. You do not need that barcode for this virtual event, and we are recording this session and all of the sessions, and those recordings will be up very shortly after each session at strivescan.com/virtual/STEM. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Megan.
Thank you, Zach. I'm going to share my screen with all of you so I can go through my presentation. Hello again, everyone. My name is Megan Murphy, and I'm the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Stevens Institute of Technology, located in Hoboken, New Jersey. Thank you all so much for taking the time to learn a little bit more about our school today. I'll give you a little bit of background on our school, talk a bit about academics, go into student life, housing, and also go into the nuts and bolts of the admissions as well as financial aid process. As Zach mentioned, there will be time for questions at the end, so please just put them in the Q&A and I will respond to them either today or follow up with an email afterward. I always like to start off with a little bit of history of our institution. Stevens was founded in 1870 by the Stevens family. We actually celebrated our 150th anniversary this year. The Stevens family was a family of inventors. They were really moving our country forward at the time, particularly in the field of transportation. The Stevens campus is actually where the family used to live. So their estate was on the land that we currently do have our campus. When Mr. Stevens passed away, in his will, he wrote that he wanted to establish an institution, a university that would award an engineering degree, but also provide students with a liberal arts foundation. Mechanical engineering was the first degree we ever awarded at Stevens. We've expanded a lot since that time, those 150 years. We now have just over 3,600 undergraduate students, over 30 different areas of study to choose from as well, across engineering, math, science, computer science, cybersecurity, business, as well as the humanities. Even though we've grown, we still are a smaller community. Our average class size is 25 students at Stevens with an 11-to-1 student to faculty ratio. So if you're looking for a school that you will have that close-knit community where you will know your faculty members and your peers, be able to develop relationships with lots of different individuals, Stevens might be a good place for you. I won't go into detail about every single academic program we offer at Stevens. As I mentioned, there are over 30 of them for you to choose from. I'll give highlights across some of the different areas of study, but I also want to note or make sure you remember that when you do apply to Stevens, you will have to do some research on our academic programs because we do ask you to choose your first choice major. So when you apply to Stevens, you're applying to your first choice program, and you also indicate a second choice program. If offered admission to Stevens, when you start at the institution, you do begin in that major. So you're starting right away in the coursework in the area of study that is of most interest to you. I mentioned we have a School of Business at Stevens. Just about 600 students are within our School of Business. They're majoring in things like accounting, management, marketing, information systems. You can also come in undecided. So as I mentioned just a moment ago that you do need to indicate an area of study that you want to pursue, we do know that you might not know just yet. So we have business undecided, science undecided, engineering undecided, humanities and arts undecided. So you can still just indicate a more broad interest in several different fields at that initial point. Also, you do have 2 years to officially declare your area of study, so definitely time to explore. In the business school, 2 programs that I just want to point out because they are unique to Stevens. One is our quantitative finance program. Just a handful of schools in the country have quantitative finance, or QF as we call it, at the undergraduate level. Many schools will have this at the master's level, but at Stevens we have it as a bachelor's degree. Quantitative finance is a really good program for a student who has 3 main interests: computer science, mathematics, as well as finance. Another program I just want to highlight within our business school is business and technology. At Stevens, business and technology is the most popular major within the business school. But the major looks a little bit different for each student depending on their interests. Because with business and technology, you choose a concentration within business and a concentration in technology. So they vary from student to student. So you might choose economics and computer science, or marketing and music and technology. Again, something within business and something within the tech side. Humanities and arts at Stevens, I mentioned that every student at Stevens will have liberal arts coursework that they will pursue. That was a part of who we were as an institution when we were founded, and we continue that today. No matter what it is or what field you go into, reading, writing, developing an argument, defending that argument are important skills to have. So you will take those humanities courses at Stevens. You can, of course, major in them as well, though. The two most popular programs within our College of Arts and Letters, within our humanities and arts programs, are music and technology and visual arts and technology. Both these programs really give you a solid foundation and a historical perspective in each of these fields, but also show you how they're moving forward. What does music look like in this century at this time with technology? What do the arts look like? So you're really getting that broad-based exposure to the programs from past up until present day. Music and technology, as well as visual arts and technology, are two programs at Stevens that allow you to submit a portfolio as a part of your application process, and they will be reviewed by faculty members, and they'll give us some insights into your ability within those areas. The sciences at Stevens really form the foundation of all of the programs that we offer. No matter what you study at Stevens, math and science coursework will be a part of your curriculum. Of course, though, as well, you can major in them. Even though everyone pretty much will take physics, for example, as a Stevens student, some form of it, whether it be one that's best for business, humanities, or a student studying within our sciences and engineering programs. The program itself is quite small. So even though the math and science programs are taken by all students at Stevens, the actual students who major in them, the numbers are smaller. So you really do, again, have that individualized attention, that ability to work with faculty members and peers that I mentioned previously. Things like chemical biology, for example, very popular for a student who might want to go on to medical school. It fulfills all of the curriculum requirements to apply to medical school. Students in the sciences like to pursue research typically. Again, having those close-knit relationships with your faculty members are helpful in that regard. You can start research as soon as your freshman year at Stevens. You typically begin by working with a faculty member in their lab, getting the lay of the land, and then you can start applying for your own research grants the summer between your freshman and sophomore year. So again, developing those relationships is really helpful in understanding your interests and then pursuing research opportunities related to that. Computer science is actually the single most popular major at Stevens. Computer science several years ago was broken up into computer science and cybersecurity. So we recognized that there was even more of a need and a desire for our students to gain more coursework within the fields of cybersecurity. So we broke out the program into two. So you major in one or the other. If you do choose to major in computer science, you can though concentrate in certain areas like cybersecurity if you just want to take a little bit of additional coursework in that area, information systems, game design, data structure, it's up to you. The first 2 years in both programs are pretty similar, and then really start specializing in those last 2 years. Engineering is the overall most popular area of study at Stevens, whereas there are the most computer science majors. If you add up all of our engineering programs, engineering majors is the highest number. Again, you can come in engineering undecided, so if you know you want engineering, but you're not quite sure yet where you fit within that discipline, that's totally fine. Our program actually lends very nicely to that. You'll notice here that we offer about a dozen different areas of engineering, and we award the BE, or the Bachelor of Engineering, at Stevens. What this means is for all students, regardless of whether or not you become a biomedical engineer, a civil engineer, an environmental engineer, everyone takes the same courses those first 3 semesters at Stevens. So all engineering students are having that same core foundation in the field. Again, this is really great for a student who's undecided because our curriculum is naturally going to allow you to explore those different areas of study. But even if you are more decided in the field, even if you know for sure you want to be a mechanical engineer, when you go out into the world of work, you're typically not only working with one type of engineer. So having a broader understanding of the field as a whole will be really helpful long-term in your career. Another reason in which we are awarding the Bachelor of Engineering, or why we're able to award the Bachelor of Engineering, is because of what we call our design spine. So at Stevens, as an engineering student, each semester, so 8 times total, you are taking a design class. So it is a very hands-on curriculum. Starts more general, building a robot, building a suspension bridge with students across the disciplines. So you'll be working with civil engineers and computer engineers and mechanical engineers. And then in those last 2 years at Stevens, again, getting much more specific to your own area of study, working with students specifically within your major and developing products related to that field. It all culminates for our engineering students and for students across our disciplines into the senior design project. So everyone spends their last year at Stevens working on their senior design or their sort of capstone thesis project. And everyone shows it off at the end of the year at our Innovation Expo, which is one of the most impressive science fairs you'll ever go to. It has engineering students, it has business students, products they've developed. There's actually sort of a Shark Tank aspect to it as well, where students can pitch their ideas for potential funding. So whether you're doing research on your own throughout your time, or whether you do it in your senior year, you can't get out of Stevens without developing something during your time there. I mentioned that you have to indicate your major as an applicant, that you can change your mind once you're at Stevens, so that's okay too. Just make sure there are a few things that you could see yourself studying at our school. I'll also mention that it is possible to double major at Stevens. You can major and minor. We also do have an accelerated bachelor's master's degree program. So because Stevens also does have a graduate school, our students are able to earn their bachelor's and their master's degree in 5 years as opposed to the typical 6, because they're able to double up on some of that coursework in their senior year. One of the things that really draws our students to Stevens, we think, based on what we hear in our conversations with them, is the ability to pursue professional practice. So I mentioned right at the start that Stevens is located in Hoboken, New Jersey, which, if you're all familiar with the area, is right across the river from New York City. So our students are certainly coming to our campus to get that traditional academic undergraduate experience, but they also are really eager to start working as well, to really build up that resume while they're an undergraduate, to put the theory that they're learning inside the classroom into practice. There are several different ways that a student can do that at Stevens. The two main ways are through internships or cooperative education. So internships are open to every student at Stevens, no matter what your major is. And internships are the more traditional summer experiences, those 6 to 8 weeks in which you work at a company. These can start as early as the summer between your freshman and your sophomore year, and our career center, your career advisor, will work with you to secure these opportunities. The other professional practice that students pursue is known as cooperative education. So co-op is something that's offered to engineering, math, science, and computer science students. Co-op is a little bit different though. It actually extends your time at Stevens to 5 years. You're doing the first year and the 5th year in the traditional way, taking full-time fall and spring semester classes, and then the 3 years in between, you're alternating every other semester between going to school full-time and working full-time. Takes you 5 years to complete the degree, but you're still only pursuing 8 undergraduate semesters of coursework. You're just stopping at least 3 times to work full time. So rather than going to school every day or taking your classes, for that semester that you're on co-op, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, you're going to work. You're working in a company. You're gaining that experience. Students like co-op. You earn money while on co-op. On average, students earn about $15,000 per $10,000 to $15,000 per co-op experience. And you're also doing it for a more extended period of time. So you can really sink your teeth into a project, really understand a company. Many of these co-ops or internships do turn into full-time opportunities at the end of the day for our students. As you can see here, about 30% of students go the cooperative education route, about 40% pursue internships. The research, as I mentioned earlier, is something that about 20% of our students pursue beyond that senior design project. And we also do have study abroad opportunities. So students are able to study away even though they are pursuing these more rigorous math and science courses. We have affiliations with universities around the world that you can choose to spend time at. These can be for full semesters abroad, a spring break abroad, or a summer abroad, depending on you and your own preferences. We have about 1,000 recruiters coming to campus every year for our students, and we have 3 career fairs each year for internship, co-op, and full-time placement. You get that career advisor from your freshman orientation, so they work with you throughout your 4 years at Stevens. What you should definitely be asking all of the schools that you're looking at is, if I go to your school and I take your classes and I work with your faculty members and I take part in your student life, what will those 4 years of my life look like, or maybe 5 if you're doing a co-op? But you should also ask all of those schools, and then what? What happens to your graduates after they attend your institution? How are they prepared for the next 40 plus years of their life after that 4 with your institution? And Stevens students are doing very well for themselves. It is a combination of what's happening inside the classroom and outside the classroom in terms of those professional experiences. 96% of our students are either employed or enrolled in graduate school full-time 6 months after graduation, with an average starting salary of just over $76,000 a year. This is for our class of 2019. We will, in a couple of months, have our updated stats for the class of 2020. We give them those 6 months out to secure their placement. And it's not just right out the gate. We're also 13th in the nation for mid-career salaries, so our students are not just doing well from the start, but they're continuing to do well as they go throughout their careers. We're 7th in the nation for best career placement as well, and I mentioned those 1,000 plus recruiters or companies that come to our campus each year seeking out Stevens students. That return on investment you will see from your Stevens experience. We'll talk a little bit later about cost of attendance and aspects like that, but students who do come to Stevens who perform well and are able to take advantage of all the opportunities that we have for them here really are able to see a return on that investment that they make in their time at Stevens. It's not all work though, it's not all classwork and professional work. There is also lots of student life activities to kind of round out that experience, to have a really strong social experience on our campus, as well as within Hoboken and outside Hoboken in New York City as well. We have over 100 clubs and organizations that students can participate in. We have 50 plus student performances each year. So if the arts are of interest to you, we have clubs and organizations that you can be a part of. We are Division III athletics, so we have 25 Division III varsity teams. So if you want to participate in sports, we are in the MAC League at the Division III level. We also have a lot of our students pursuing community service. So in reading applications, I know that many of you are actively involved in your communities, do enjoy that ability to give back. So our Stevens students are doing the same. And being in a city environment, there are many different populations students can work with. And we have a really good relationship with the community. So students are able to actively engage off our campus as well, volunteering for causes that they're passionate about. At Stevens, housing is guaranteed all 4 years. It's guaranteed, but it's not required. And it looks a little bit different depending on what year you are at Stevens. So for example, if you are a first-year student and you are living on campus, you are living in one of our 7 traditional residence halls that we have up the hill. Having that traditional residential life experience, whether it be a double, triple, quad, single, shared bathroom space, shared living spaces. Sophomore, junior, and senior year, if you are a resident of the institution, Stevens actually leases apartments in the city of Hoboken on your behalf. So you're still considered a resident of the institution because you're getting your housing through the school. However, you are in the city of Hoboken. Hoboken itself is just a mile by a mile though. So it is a city, but it is a very manageable city. It is a walkable city. Students can walk from any of these apartment buildings up to campus. We also do have shuttles that run around the city of Hoboken as well, bringing students back and forth from our leased apartments up to campus. You can also, of course, choose to commute to campus. We have students who are commuters in the traditional sense in that they live at home and come to campus for their classes. We also do have students who are considered commuters because they may live on their own in an apartment, but it's not, they didn't get that apartment through Stevens, so they would be considered commuters in that sense. When it comes to freshmen though, over 90% of our first year students do live in on-campus housing, so it is a popular option for that group of students. One great thing about the leased housing, so once you're a sophomore, junior, and senior and have the ability to be in a leased apartment, is the fact that it's for a full 12 months, the lease. So students who are staying over the summer to pursue research or maybe do their co-op or their internship or take summer classes are able to stay in their apartment. You can also stay in the apartment year over year. So if you move into a space your sophomore year and like it, you can stay there for the next several years. So that's a nice perk. Also, students do like it because there is increased level of independence. They are apartments, fully furnished, having the living area, the kitchen area, and the rooms for the students. So they do enjoy sort of moving into that apartment style living in those upper class years. That is how it currently stands. As we speak, construction is happening on our campus for our new housing center for the university. So once this is complete and we are set to move in our first group of students the fall of 2022, we will have 1,000 more residential spaces on campus for our students. So we'll be able to have half of our students on campus in housing and the other half who choose to receive housing through the institution in leased housing in Hoboken. In terms of dining at Stevens, there are many different dining options for you, whether it be the traditional cafeteria style, sort of that all you can eat, and also more grab and go spaces on campus as well. Coffee shops too, where you can kind of grab a coffee, sit with some friends, chat before you go on to your next class. You will have an ID card at Stevens that will have your meal plan on it that you swipe and it will deduct from there. It also sort of acts as a debit card. We can put money on it and use it as well. We also do have relationships with establishments in the city of Hoboken that use our meal plan. So a student can also go eat in a restaurant in Hoboken and potentially use a meal swipe there as well. So our students really do have the opportunity to have their food obviously on our campus, but also being in a more city environment. There are lots of restaurants in the city of Hoboken as well along Washington Street, which is our main street, that they can enjoy too. Here are some construction projects that have recently completed at Stevens. I mentioned the Student Housing and University Center that is currently underway now. I was actually looking the past day. They have sort of a video that you can watch it going up, and they've made some tremendous progress on these two buildings over the past several months. As I mentioned, it will be 2 residential towers that you can see here that will accommodate an additional 1,000 students. The first few stories of the university space, though, are meant for student life. So dining facilities, fitness center, conference rooms, student life offices. So everyone will have access to this building because there will be student life space and different facilities for all students to access in this building. But then of course also a number of students will be living in the residential towers as well. As you can see in the background, it is an incredible view of New York City from these residence halls, as well as some of our other already established residence halls on campus. I mentioned a few moments ago, our students do very well for themselves, but you'll be hard pressed to find a better view than this in your adult life. So our students really do enjoy living on our campus and having that beautiful view of the New York City skyline. Last year, we completed a new Student Health and Wellness Center, which is home to our student health services, student counseling, disability services, as well as wellness education. So that is a new space for our students too. And last fall, we opened up our Gateway Academic Center. So I mentioned previously that computer science is our most popular major at Stevens. So rather than having those students have to sort of fight for the resources that we had on campus, we, in establishing a new academic center, made that the home of the computer science and cybersecurity program. So new classrooms, new faculty offices, teaching and research labs for our computer science, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and healthcare innovation programs. Again, everyone has access to this building, the study spaces, the classrooms, but it really is just home to those computer science and cybersecurity faculty members and students. So that's sort of what I wanted to cover about our institution from an academic, student life, professional opportunity perspective. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit and just talk about the application and financial aid process. So the first thing you need to know is what kinds of applications we accept. So Stevens is on the Common Application. So if you are looking to apply to schools using the Common Application, you can add us to that list. It's easy to do that. Many different schools accept that application. And if you are going into your senior year this year, that application for you went live on August 1, so you can start applying to institutions. Stevens also uses what we call the custom application. It is an application that is just Stevens specific. It's a bit shorter. Some of the information is pre-populated for you if you're already in our system. However, we don't have a preference as to one or the other. So you can submit the Common App or the Custom App, whatever you'd like. We accept both of them. The Custom App, of course, because it's just for us, you can kind of shout out Stevens in your essay if you wanted to, whereas on the Common App, don't do that because that goes to everyone. Really, again, it's entirely up to you. We accept both and we have no preference. Really the most important piece to your application is that next piece that's noted, which is your transcript. This is your academic story. Who are you as a student? How have you been as a student for the past 3 years? And how are you continuing on into your senior year? At Stevens, we're looking very closely at the courses you've taken, obviously how you performed in those courses. And we are looking at certain classes too, depending upon what it is that you're interested in studying. So at Stevens, we do put on our website what we would like to see in terms of completed coursework for our applicants. What do we want to see for a student who's applying to an engineering program, a math, a science, computer science program? What do we want to see for a business student or someone within our humanities and arts or the College of Arts and Letters? So do check out our website for that recommended coursework. To kind of give you a sense here, for engineering, we want to see things like biology, chemistry, physics, as well as calculus. For business programs, have you taken at least 2 of the 3 of biology, chemistry, physics, pre-calculus, calculus if you want to major in quantitative finance, which is a more math-heavy program. Computer science and cybersecurity, math and science fall into those same engineering classes like calculus, math, biology, chemistry, physics. Humanities and arts, you don't need to perhaps have achieved as high within the sciences and the math because that's not going to be what you're emphasizing as much in your studies at Stevens. So again, the coursework really does align with what it is that you would like to ultimately go on and pursue at our institution. Students always ask about rigor in the coursework. So we certainly do want to see that you're taking honors classes, AP classes, IB classes, but only if your school offers that. Remember that when we're looking at your transcript, we're looking at it in combination with your school profile or your school report. So we're really not comparing you to one another. We're comparing you to the environment you've been in and what have you been able to achieve within the opportunities that have been presented to you. So if your school does allow you to go a bit higher in certain areas of study, pursue a bit more rigor, we do encourage you to do that, but do it in a balanced way. Do it so that you're still able to be successful in the classes that you're taking, but maybe just extending yourself a bit more in those areas that you're particularly passionate about. At Stevens, we require 2 letters of recommendation, one from a counselor and one from a teacher. The counselor letter of recommendation provides us a little bit more with that context that I was referring to, helps us understand you within your particular high school. The counselor recommendation will also be particularly helpful this year, as I'm sure many of your spring semester schedules were maybe a bit altered or changed compared to what it was, what you were doing previously before many students went to remote learning. So we'll be taking that into consideration as well. And then the teacher recommendation, it can be anyone you choose. We don't require a particular subject area or particular class year. It's really up to you. Someone that you feel as though you've established a relationship with during your time in high school. We only require the 2. If you want to send a 3rd, we of course will accept it. We don't send anything back to you. But if you are adding more recommendations beyond the requirements, just make sure the person is adding something new to the conversation, bringing in a different aspect of you as a person, as a student, that we're not getting from the other recommendation letters we're receiving. Stevens has decided, as many other institutions have, to go test optional for fall 2021 admission. So if you're going into your senior year this year and applying for freshman admission for fall 2021, you have the option to submit your SAT or ACT scores. The choice is entirely up to you, and you let us know on your application. So when you fill out your application at Stevens, we will ask you, do you want us to consider test scores? Do you not want us to consider test scores? If you say no, we will not consider test scores and it will not hold back our review of your application in any way, your eligibility for admission or scholarships. If you do choose to submit your testing, you will then let us know whether or not you're going to submit those scores officially, so through SAT or ACT, or whether you want to self-report them. Students who self-report their test scores for consideration in our review, should they ultimately be offered admission and decide to enroll at Stevens, we will then require you to submit your official test scores at that time. There are a few exceptions to the test optional policy. So for example, if you're applying to our accelerated pre-medicine program or our accelerated pre-law program, you still have to submit the SAT or the ACT. If you are a student who attends a school that does not provide grades, or you are a homeschool student, you still do have to submit the SAT or the ACT. But other than that, students who fall into all the other categories have the option to choose whether they want to submit testing or whether they do not. We also have the essay as a requirement here. I'll just clarify a bit on that. The only essay we require is the one that's already included with your common application, your custom application. So that personal statement, that essay that goes to every school, the one about you specifically that you have a few different choices and then just sort of a topic of your choice as well. So you can really write about anything. At Stevens, we don't have any supplemental questions. So we do have questions like, what do you want to major in? Do you want to apply early decision or regular decision? Do you want to live on campus or not? Things like that, but we don't have any additional short answer responses. Do definitely check all the schools you're applying to though. Some institutions will have additional essays and you do want to make sure that those are all ready to go when you go to submit your application. In terms of the Common App essay or the personal statement that we require, Students ask all the time what we want to read about. We really do not have any preconceived notions going into that essay about what we want it to be about. It can really be about anything, just make sure it's about you. And what I also tell students is look at your application as a whole. You only have so much room to tell us as much as you can about you. So what is missing? What won't your transcript say, or your test scores if you choose to submit them, or your letters of recommendation? Is there sort of a piece to the puzzle that's missing? What your activity section, that's a part of your common application. What isn't mentioned there? Maybe write your essay about that just to bring a new piece to the equation. Stevens also has an optional interview component, so you're not required to complete an interview as a part of your application process. However, you are more than welcome to. We will be posting more interview dates this fall for students, and you have up until the application deadline you choose to interview. Going into deadlines, I mentioned that we have early decision and regular decision at Stevens. Early decision is the binding agreement. If you apply early decision to our institution, you are telling us, if I am admitted, I will come. We are your first choice school if you're applying early decision. We have early decision 1 and early decision 2. Early decision 1, you apply by November 15th and you find out by December 15th. Early decision 2, you apply by January 15th and you find out by February 15th. The only difference between early decision 1 and early decision 2 is when you apply by and when you're notified by. That binding component is still the same across the board there. Of course, we also have regular decision at Stevens. You can apply to as many schools regular decision as you'd like. There's no commitment that you're making to a school when you apply regular decision. You apply by January 15th. You find out by April 1. You find out many of your admission decisions around that same time, kind of can lay them all out on the kitchen table with your financial aid awards as well, and decide where it is that you'd like to enroll. No matter when it is that you apply for admission to Stevens, though, if you are offered admission, you will have your financial aid award to our institution at the time of admission. Here's just a little bit of information on our freshman profile from 2019. We had over 10,000 applications we received that year with about a 40% acceptance rate. The average GPA was a 3.8 for our admitted students. Think A's and B's. If you're earning A's and B's in a challenging course load, that is certainly competitive for our institution. Our middle 50% of test scores were a 1340 to a 1500 on the SAT and the ACT a 30 to a 33. These are not cutoffs. Those were just the middle 50% for our class that year. So certainly students who scored higher and lower were also offered admission. So we do review every single application for admission regardless of GPA or test score. Once we sort of are reviewing your application and we make sure that academically we know that you'd be successful at the institution, those other things like the essay, the recommendation letter, you're involved in extracurricular activities. Not necessarily, you know, we don't need to see a specific activity, but are you engaged outside the classroom? What are you doing in addition to your academics to keep yourself involved? And expand your mind about what activities means. It is the clubs and organizations, the sports and the arts programs at your current high school, but also do you have family responsibilities, work responsibilities? We really want to know everything that you're doing that's productive outside the classroom. The common application or the custom application gives you an opportunity to list those activities there. You are also welcome to submit a resume through your application portal once you apply for admission. I mentioned financial aid a bit throughout when we were also talking about return on investment, and just to kind of break it out a little bit more here. You see that with tuition and fees and room and board for last year, the cost of attendance at Stevens was about $70,000 a year. At Stevens, over 90% of our students, though, do receive some form of financial assistance. So most students are not paying that entire cost of attendance. Aid works in a couple different ways. At Stevens, we award both need-based aid and merit-based aid. For merit-based aid, you're automatically considered for it just by applying for admission. So your application for admission also serves as your merit-based scholarship application. The only merit-based scholarship at Stevens that a student actually has to apply for is the FIRST Robotics Scholarship. That's the only one that requires a separate application, and that's through the national organization. So again, things like Stevens scholarships, that merit-based aid, automatically considered for it just by applying for admission. To be considered for need-based aid, you have to do two things. If you're a domestic student, you have to fill out the FAFSA and the CSS profile. So that's the two things. If you're an international student, just the CSS profile. The FAFSA and the CSS profile give us your family's estimated contribution figure, and we are able to then see what grants we have available to provide you with that need-based aid. We're also able to determine then if you have work-study eligibility or what loans you might be eligible for through the federal and state as well. So main categories aid falls under merit and need, and then that aid can then be broken up into scholarships, grants, work, study, or loan opportunities. The time in which you apply for admission, so the deadline, whether you choose early decision 1, early decision 2, or regular decision, will determine your deadline for your financial aid documents. Because as I mentioned, we do release financial aid awards with your admission decision. So in order to do that, we need those documents. If you're applying for early decision 1, you need to submit your CSS profile and your FAFSA by December 1. If you're applying early decision 2, those documents by January 15th. And if you're applying regular decision, those 2 documents by February 15th. Both documents become available October 1. So if you are, again, a senior, October 1 of this year, you'll be able to complete the CSS profile as well as the FAFSA to be considered for need-based aid at Stevens. Now I'm going to move to the Q&A. I see that some of them have already come in, so I'll just start looking at that and answer as we go. So one student asked about the Accelerated PreMedicine class. So Accelerated PreMedicine is a program at Stevens. You do have to apply by November 15th for the program. It's not an early decision program, but you do have to apply by that date because we need to review your application as well as Rutgers Medical School because that's the school we have the relationship with. So it takes a bit longer in the process. How it works, if you are ultimately offered admission to this program, you will spend 3 years at Stevens majoring in chemical biology. So it's a shortened undergraduate experience, and then you go on to Rutgers Medical School for those last 4 years. Students are required to submit the SAT or the ACT for this program, as I mentioned. It's recommended but not required to submit subject tests, so one in either biology or chemistry as well as mathematics. And you're told at points throughout the process, it is a competitive process, so we continue to let you know throughout the process if we're still considering you for the Accelerated PreMedicine program or if we've moved to your second choice program. So if you're not ultimately offered admission to the Accelerated PreMedicine program at Stevens, you can still be offered admission to a different major at our institution. There was a question about mechanical engineering and aerospace. Yes, you can major in mechanical engineering at Stevens and concentrate in aerospace engineering. We don't have an aerospace engineering major, but we do have that concentration within the mechanical engineering program. Question about international students and internships or co-op opportunities. Our international students are able to secure internships and co-op opportunities as well. They do work with their Career Center advisor, as I mentioned earlier, to make sure that those opportunities are in line with any guidelines that they might have to follow as international students working in the US. How competitive to gain co-op? Students who want to pursue cooperative education, who want to pursue internships, are able to secure those opportunities. You may not get your first choice, right? You still do have to go through the process of applying, interviewing, and securing that position, but students are able to get those positions because of the abundance of opportunities that we have in our location and through the relationships that our Career Center has made. So having that career advisor from day one, they already start working with you in that first semester to get your resume in order, get your cover letter together, practice your interview skills. So you really are prepared going into that process. And then also that's what helps with full-time placement on the back end, because when you go for that interview for that full-time job, maybe you've already worked at the company, you've had experience there already, or you're able to really draw upon real experience you've already had to demonstrate why you are a good fit for that particular role. On-campus residency requirement. No, we do not require students to live on campus at Stevens. You are guaranteed housing all 4 years if you want it, but you are certainly not required to live on campus. What advisors does a student typically get? I mentioned the career advisor a couple times already. You will also have a peer leader who will be an older student, an upperclassman within your chosen area of study. You will also have a faculty advisor who is a professor within your chosen area of study. And you will also have an academic advisor who works within our Office of Undergraduate Academics, so who's helping you more generally navigate the curriculum requirements of the school, also help you if you want to change your major, take on a double major or a minor perhaps. Innovation makerspace on campus. Yes, Stevens does have a space on campus where students can be innovating. We also have a program called Launchpad at Stevens, which helps students develop ideas or businesses, develop patents as well. So we definitely do have spaces on campus where students can be creating their own products, for example. I mentioned the average SAT score was at 1340 to 1500. That's our middle 50% for the class, the incoming class of 2019. Where can I find those specific recommended courses? So I mentioned when I was talking about transcripts about the types of classes we want to see. So if you go to the undergraduate admissions webpage and the how to apply section, you'll see the recommended coursework there under the first year students tab. So stevens.edu, undergraduate admissions, how to apply, first-year students, and you'll find the recommended coursework there. Probably also if you went to stevens.edu and just typed in recommended coursework, you'd be able to see it there. For the pre-med program, we had another question about that. You need to score at least a 1400 on the SAT and at least a 32 on the ACT in one sitting. Those tests are not super scored for the pre-med program to be considered for the program. Question about early decision, is it binding? Yes, early decision is a binding agreement. So if you apply to Stevens early decision 1 or early decision 2, you are telling us if I am admitted, I will enroll. So we definitely have to be your first choice institution. There are different decision plans that you can find out earlier that are not binding. Those are not the ones that Stevens is a part of. The early decision, that binding commitment, is the one that we do have. Questions about scholarships and early and regular. So no matter when you apply to Stevens, whether you apply early decision 1, early decision 2, or regular decision, you are considered for need aid if you submit the CSS profile on the FAFSA, and merit-based aid by applying for admission. Your award is not going to change based upon when you apply for admission or what you're eligible for. What does change is the information that you have, right? So if you're an early decision applicant to Stevens, you're going to receive our financial aid award, but you might not have financial aid awards from other institutions. Whereas as a regular decision candidate, you'll have our financial aid award as well as other schools too. So that's really the main difference, not the amount of aid that you would receive across early decision and regular decision, but the other aid packages you might have at that time. Question about Stevens having an honor program. We do have a couple programs, the Clark Scholars Program, the Pinnacle Scholars Program at Stevens, but those are, again, programs that you're automatically considered for just by applying for admission. There are no extra honors program application requirements that you need to complete. Just by submitting your application for admission and those required documents we went through, you're automatically considered for them. Student asked questions about if they're taking college classes, can they get their recommendation from that teacher? Absolutely, not a problem. We already talked about early action. Remember, Stevens doesn't have early action, we just have early decision. Student asked about the best way to learn more about us during this time in which it's a little bit more challenging to visit, well, much more challenging to visit campuses. So coming to presentations like this is certainly helpful. At Stevens, we also do have a virtual tour on our website. We do also run sessions that are called Conversations with Stevens Students. So rather than just hearing from someone like me who works in the admissions office, you can hear more from current students. And we also will be putting out a new webinar series in September that will provide more specific content on our business school, our College of Arts and Letters, our Career Center, our engineering program, computer science, student life at Stevens, things along those lines. So definitely do keep checking back to our campus visit portal for those virtual opportunities. Kind of going to expand a little bit on what I was talking about with some of the science programs like biology, chemical biology, physics being smaller programs. You still certainly have the ability to specialize. When I mean smaller, I don't mean in terms of number of classes. There's still really robust programs where you're really getting that solid foundation in the field and then able to specialize within the field. I mean smaller in the sense of numbers of students. So the fact that we might have 1,000 students in the freshman class and only 100 of them are within that major, that gives you an ability to, again, get that more individualized attention, have more of those opportunities to be doing research with your faculty. So when I mean smaller, I mean it in that sense, not necessarily the opportunities, because those are still quite great even within these programs. Because again, as I mentioned, they're really the backbone and the foundation of our entire institution. So all students need to take courses within this area of study. Question about SAT or ACT and getting super scored. If you do apply with either the SAT or ACT to Stevens, we will take the strongest section across test dates to create that strongest composite for you. So we do super score during that process. Question about engineering physics. We no longer offer engineering physics at Stevens. It was changed into our engineering concentration in optical. Whereas we do still have some engineering physics students at Stevens who are finishing out the program, that is no longer an option for first-year applicants. Question about the food. The food is great. I will also preface this by saying I don't have any allergies and I'm not a picky eater, so I know that some folks have to deal with those challenges. The food on campus is really good, and there are so many different types of cuisines in Hoboken as well. And it's really, again, the city really does have sort of a neighborhood feel, so you'll have your local spots that you will really enjoy and keep going back to. Question about subject tests, not required for any of our programs. They haven't been, with the exception of that accelerated pre-medicine program, where this year, because of the issues with testing, we are recommending but not requiring them. But subject tests other than that will not be considered in our review. Can you have a car on campus? So commuter students can have a car on campus. They will get a parking pass. However, if you are a resident, you will not have a spot on campus for a car. There are certainly parking garages in the city of Hoboken that you can utilize, but the spots on campus go first to commuters, faculty, and staff who need to drive to campus. Is Stevens a suitcase school? Thank you for asking this. I'd mentioned that over 90% of our freshmen do live in on-campus housing, so certainly not a suitcase school. Students are staying on our campus. They're making their home in Hoboken. You know, many of our students do come from New Jersey or the surrounding states, so they might not be especially far from home. But once they're on campus and they have their academics and they have their activities and they see all that's going on in Hoboken, then of course New York City across the way where they're pursuing professional opportunities, going to Broadway shows, museums, sporting events, restaurants. There really is so much for them to do. They are staying on campus. They're really making their home there in Hoboken. And that continues on throughout your sophomore, junior, and senior year as well. Does the price of dorms vary? That's a good question. So yes, when you're living on campus, it is a cheaper experience than when you are living off campus by a bit. We do post all of the costs of housing on our website if you wanted to dive into that a little bit further. But as I mentioned, when you are living in the leased apartments, they are for full calendar years. So you are able to stay for a full 12 months as opposed to the typical 9 of an academic year. Zach, is my time up?
It is. Thank you so much, Megan. This was great information, and thank you for sharing your time with us. Students and counselors, thank you so much for joining us as well. There were a ton of questions. I'm going to get them over to Megan so she can
Yep. Sorry, I can hear you now, Zach.
Oh, do you know if Stevens is doing any panels tomorrow or Thursday?
We did one this morning. Sorry, we were on the co-ops internship panel this morning. Our dean, Jackie, was on that panel. But you can watch the recording of it.
They were exactly. The third bullet point there is the recordings are all available at strivescan.com/virtual/STEM. So you can watch all of these recordings. And thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.